Alright, so I wanted to make a series going over games that impressed me this week. And while the title says this week, this definitely won't be a weekly series. I'll try to make it a weekly series and it will act as motivation for me to release a video every week. But knowing me, sometimes I'll play the same games for weeks in a row and it won't be worth making a video like this. So think of it as kind of a games that impressed me recently series, but I will try to release this every week. I just like the title, games that impressed me this week. Couple more housekeeping things to go over. One, I'll talk about all sorts of games here. It'll be very random most of the time, and this won't be a very focused series. It'll literally just be, okay, what did I play this week? What impressed me? And then the other thing is what didn't impress me. So the structure of these videos will essentially be the start of it, and the bulk of it will be the games that impressed me, and I'll timestamp those games. And then the latter half of the video, or probably the last 25% of the video, will be the games that disappointed me, and I'll talk briefly about them. So to clarify, it'll be games that impressed me, and then towards the end of the video, it'll be games that didn't impress me or disappointed me. I'll be talking about a multitude of games that came out years ago or games that came out recently. I'll also be going over updates for games. Games get updated all the time, games get changed all the time, patches for games come out, so while a game might impress me one week, it could disappoint me the next, or it could impress me multiple weeks in a row. So there's a chance that I'll talk about the same game multiple times. But that's basically it. Again, don't take this as a weekly series, but it is kind of motivation for me to try get a video out every week. So let's get into it. So first on this list is Dead Cells. Dead Cells is a game I'm still trying to get good at, and with the release of the Return to Castlevania DLC, I have even more reason to play it. There is so much to get through with Dead Cells, so many locations, weapons, enemies, bosses. It's astonishing how out of all the top tier roguelikes, this is the one I hear the least about. Everyone praises Hades and Risk of Rain 2, but Dead Cells is a contender for best in the 2D roguelike space. Combat is so viscerally satisfying, and there's a real skill in your movements and decision making. So Dead Cells is a hard game. I haven't even beaten it yet, but I am determined to. For some people, the 2D nature of the game might turn you away, but please don't let it. I've said this previously, but as soon as I gave 2D games more of a go, I realized that a lot of them control well on PC and are actually super fun. All of the worries I had going into them quickly dissipated, and that's exactly what happened with Dead Cells 2. I've had a solid time with this game, even before the recent DLC. As I said, there's a lot of progression to get through and a lot to explore. It's one of those games I could see myself playing for fun even after I've completed it, just because the gameplay is so polished. So on my quest to play as many Vampire Survivor clones as I can, another Survivor bullet hell that has impressed me is Boneraiser Minions. It's one I got recently. Essentially, you're a necromancer without any weapons, so the way that you fight back is by raising an army of the dead to fight for you. It's got a beautiful dark pixel art style that fits right with the theme of the game, and off the bat, I have to give credit to progression and variety in this game. There's a whole host of characters, each of which you can invest in a skill tree for, and then after that, you've got a bunch of general skills to unlock and upgrade, and you can even upgrade the enemy forces to give you more resources. And of course, maps, achievements, cosmetics, and more to unlock as well. In terms of actual gameplay, I'll go deeper in my Survivor video, but the gameplay is surprisingly engaging. Sound design is on point, and watching your little minions kill the hordes of enemies is awesome. In-run progression revolves around raising minions from the ground and upgrading them, and then eventually merging them together to create better minions, as well as picking up spells and relics. Worth giving it a go if you're into this genre, because there is a lot to do here. Next, I wanted to give a shout out to Borderlands 3. Borderlands 3 is a game I think deserves a lot more credit now that it's had its DLC cycle fully completed. The game has a lot of content to grind through, especially with the additions of the designers and director's cut DLCs. I played a lot of Borderlands 3 maybe 6 months ago, but started up playing again recently with mates, and of course it still holds up. Borderlands 3 is proof that Gearbox has control over one of, if not the most solid looter shooter foundations on the market at the moment. This game has its issues, don't get me wrong. The early game pace is slow, and there's no dialogue skip, which is incredibly frustrating, especially in a game that came out in 2019. But the gameplay loop is so solid with all this extra content packed on that the endgame grind is worth all the waiting through the unskippable dialogue and the lackluster narrative. To clarify, on release, Borderlands 3 was very underwhelming, as Gearbox struggled to realize that what Borderlands players really want is essentially a sandbox of infinite bosses and objectives to grind through to min-max gear, almost like an MMO but existing in the Borderlands universe. We still don't have that exact thing, but what we do have is the best Borderlands game to date. Borderlands 2 will always be great and my personal favorite, but take your nostalgia glasses off and realize how fluid and superior Borderlands 3 gameplay really is. I bought this game on Epic, but just got it on Steam recently to do a bit of achievement hunting. If you're looking for a looter shooter to put hundreds of hours into and you haven't tried Borderlands 3, I highly recommend picking up the Ultimate Edition and giving it a go. Another Vampire Survivor inspired bullet hell is Brotato. I picked this up recently and it's quickly becoming one of my favorites, despite having no meta progression like character level, which is something I really enjoy. But there are unlocks and a good amount of objectives to go for. It has kind of like a Flash game era vibe, but the animations look a lot smoother than the ones back in that day did, and I kind of dig the art style as well. In terms of variety, this one is high on that list. The amount of different playable potatoes is pretty insane, and what's more insane is how even with this many different characters, they all remain very unique and will all favor different builds and require different items to do well. Apart from progression and variety, the actual gameplay is great. It's a smaller arena than you might be used to, but that's not a bad thing, especially because the gameplay here feels a lot more focused than others I've played. You can equip up to 6 weapons that vary from melee to ranged and then have a simple stat increase choice on level up, but what makes the run special for me is how much freedom you have in the shop. You can buy a lot more than you might be used to in the shop after completing each 1-minute stage, and you'll often leave there with a couple different items and a couple different weapon upgrades, mainly because rerolls are so cheap. This doesn't mean you'll become overpowered, however, as it seems the difficulty scales well enough to keep you in check, which is good. In terms of combat and sound design, which are pretty crucial in games like this, Brotato gets it right. I'll go more in depth when I make a video going over all of these games, but for now, I can do nothing but recommend you give it a go, especially if you like Vampire Survivors. Okay, so look, Battlebit might be on this list every single week. In all seriousness, Battlebit Remastered is a game that, for me, shits on Battlefield 2042 in many ways. Graphically, yeah, 2042 shits on Battlebit, but I've never really been one to play games for the graphics, and once you enter a server with 254 players on one battlefield, you'll soon understand that this game actually has a lot going for it. Satisfying gunplay, fully destructible environments, and a huge variety of weapons, attachments, vehicles, classes, and more. This game is in early access, but it's already amassed a loyal following who will play it every chance they get whenever the weekly tests go up. I am one of those loyal followers. The biggest draw, obviously, for Battlebit is how seamlessly it runs, pitting 127 players versus 127 players. Never have I noticed any egregious networking or performance issues, which means the focus can be on the chaos that ensues with the amount of players fighting for position. There's always potential for multi-kills and crazy moments, and the forced hot mic when you and others die is something that you'll have to be wary of, but it's also hilarious. Something I should elaborate on that this game gets right for me is gunplay. The weapon feedback is really well done, with recoil that fits for a more hardcore experience, but instead it exists in a low poly world, and it's awesome that they've been able to mix them together. Same with actually killing a player. The hit marker and sound design is flawless, and headshots sound and feel great too. Movement is another positive for the game. It's fast, but not too fast, and allows for skilled players to dominate. Battlebit is spectacular, and I highly recommend downloading it and giving it a go when the weekly test goes live. It's casual and hardcore player friendly, and I almost guarantee you'll enjoy your experience. Alright, so now to the games that disappointed me this week. Marvel Snap is a game I'm playing a lot of, so I absolutely reserve the right to talk about it, especially when it comes to big balance updates. If you play, you'll know that the meta has been dominated by Thanos, Lockjaw Leech, and Shuri decks. With the recent patch, they hurt Thanos a decent bit, but he'll still remain a strong card with a lot of tempo and control of the game. The other nerfs to cards like Quinjet and She-Hulk are fine after a little contemplation, but the real reason Marvel Snap is in this disappointed category today is because they failed to nerf Shuri. People will complain about Leech being untouched, but I never really saw Leech outside of a Thanos deck. Shuri to me was always the real issue, and the fact that her and her archetype was only dented by this patch is really annoying. Shuri, Red Skull Taskmaster remains a strong win condition, so does skipping on 5 and She-Hulk Task on 6. But what makes this situation even worse is the fact that Sauron just went down to Series 4, which means a lot of players will have access to him, making Shuri decks even stronger. In fact, after I got Sauron, Shuri plus Sauron was an easy ticket to infinite for me. So Marvel Snap disappointed me this week by releasing a patch that seemed like it was either skipping certain nerfs or was simply out of touch with the issues plaguing the meta. Usually this wouldn't be an issue, but not nerfing Shuri harder seems like a massive oversight. And then the last game in this video, and the one that disappointed me as well this week, is 20 Minutes Till Dawn. 20 Minutes Till Dawn is another survivor roguelike, and one that I enjoyed when I first played it after the hype surrounding Vampire Survivors, but when playing it recently to get ready for a video I'm doing on these types of games, 20 Minutes Till Dawn failed to impress me with anything significant. I will go more in depth in that other video I just mentioned, but I think one of the reasons this game falls flat for me is how in almost every aspect it's outshined by other games in the genre. The art style will of course be subjective, but for me it's a bit too dull dull. Variety in characters and weapons is fine, but when compared to other games on the market, there's less here than in other games. I think one of the biggest things holding this game back is objectives. There's just not a lot to grind for. You can increase the difficulty and purchase new runes to assist your runs, but you can only choose one rune, and increasing the difficulty doesn't feel super fulfilling when there's not much else to complement the progression. To be fair to this game, it is in early access, so who knows, maybe it will get deeper and more rewarding over time, but for now, there are so many more games on the market that feel more satisfying and have a lot more variety than this one. Alright, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any feedback, I'd really appreciate it if you left it in the comments. I'll try and read it, and then I can make improvements to the next time I do this video. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Follow me on Twitch, follow me on Twitter, subscribe, and have a great day.